Get your man the flute to play song, the fuck.
There you go. It's everybody. Grma Tashiv, and welcome back to episode number 133 of the Inline G Flute podcast with me, your host. Me. Fuck, I should have got that one. With me, your host, motherfucking Inline G. Fuck, where else would you get this kind of content? So, lads, listen quickly. This episode is a sequel, and hopefully a good one. Hopefully we're talking like Godfather 2 and not fucking Shrek 7 or whatever the fuck is going on now. And, do you know, I get asked all the time by you guys and by anyone who I tell I've got a podcast, how do you come up with ideas for your podcast? How do you come up with topics? Honestly, most of the time it's booze. You see the Guinness, after a few pints, things start going into my brain that probably shouldn't be going out of my brain. But that's what the podcast is for, because there's nobody to stop me. But as I said last week, so if you haven't watched last week's episode, it's not essential. It is a sequel, but it's not essential. I'll just give you a little bit of a background on it. It's a good episode, though. I talked about musical nostalgia and the effect it has on our thinking, our emotions, the way we approach music, and also guilt when it comes to being an artist, setting your own goals and standards and not achieving them, and knowing when to let go. All these lovely things. It was a really fun episode, but I ran out of runway at the end, so this is the sequel. This is what I actually wrote for the episode that I never got around to doing. So, quick background for those who didn't listen to last week's episode. I'm on a plane, okay, a couple of weeks ago, going from Tbilisi to Cologne, and I'm watching the Premier League Years. And for anyone unfamiliar, the Premier League Years is a football show they made every single year at the end of the season. So, it would highlight everything that happened from August to May in the football season. When I say football, I mean soccer. And in the Premier League, we're talking about the English Premier League. So they highlight that and they go month by month, the main games that happen, the main news, and they'll also cover the main world news in that month. Okay? It's a great show, but they made it at the time. It's not made in retrospect. They made it at the time. They still make it now. So firstly, I'm watching this with a few glasses of wine. I mean, I'm struck by how editing in TV shows in the early 2000s is so much slower in its pacing. And it takes more of a commitment from me, I feel like, to enjoy it as opposed to like this hyper engaging modern content that we're used to on TikTok. And even when you go to watch a fucking film these days, it's instantly super engaging. Much slower pace. It was nice. And it's strange because I used to think, I was convinced when I was younger, when this came out, when this particular episode came out, I was 13, it seemed so fucking high energy and chaotic and bang, 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 bang. But it wasn't at all. It's one of those fun cultural shifts that we notice over time. But anyway, I'm watching away, and there's been this general discussion about football online recently. And this general trend as well was called the Barclaymans trend. So that was when Barclays, the bank, sponsored the English Premier League. It was called the Barclays Premier League. I think it was 2002 to 2016. So there's a whole lot of nostalgia involved in this. People are reflecting back to when football was maybe a little bit simpler, a different style of game, and we call it the Barclays Men era. We did cover nostalgia, so go listen to last week's episode if you want that. But anyway, football was different back in those days. It's not just rose-tinted glasses. There is a difference in the way the game, especially at that elite level, was played. Now, don't worry. I'm going to start talking about the flute and music eventually. Bear with me here. You might learn something. Fuck it. So, the modern game of football, there's a huge amount of analysis going on now. In my opinion, that's been influenced by American sports. Obviously, Americans are now starting to watch soccer a lot more. And because of that, that's where the money's coming from. So we're trying to suit our analysis and our way we approach the game to suit the American viewership. So there's a lot of numbers. There's a lot of data. There's a lot of, XG, expected goals, and completed passes, and all this kind of shit. But essentially, the modern game is all about control. And we have a nostalgia for this Barclaymans era of a time when sport, and football especially, was a lot more fucking chaotic. Control wasn't there. There was more 30-yard screamers. Fucking Frank Lampard picking the ball up and hitting it at the top corner out of nowhere for no reason. There was more goals. There was more unhinged interviews. Man, the characters of the game back then, before every single manager and coach and player had a full social media team behind them. Nowadays, it's just disappointed not to get the 3 points today, but we move forward with a thumbs up emoji. Man, it was much more unhinged back in those days. Like Jose Mourinho, when he arrived at Chelsea in 2004. First interview, famously, don't call me arrogant, but I am a special one. I am not one from the bottle. I am a special one. I am European champion. Fucking class. Or that time he did the interview for United, he's like, football heritage. Kevin De Bruyne, Fernandinho. These are investments of the past. Heritage. See where United players play, where they play, how they play, if they play. Man, these aren't. I'm having way too much fun. These interviews back in the mid 2000s were unhinged because the media was focused on the English Premier League, but people weren't trained how to deal with it yet. They were just fucking saying it. You know, there was Sir Alex Ferguson famously calling the last few minutes of a match squeaky bum time. You couldn't say that nowadays. I sound like fucking Nigel Farage. Couldn't say that nowadays. Squeaky bum time, because that's when you're on the edge of your seat. Or Ian Holloway. Oh. Obviously, none of my American friends will have heard of Ian Holloway. A lot of my fucking British and Irish friends, even Germans, might not have. He was a football manager in the mid 2000s. Still is, I think, in the 2010s. Managed Plymouth Argyle, managed Blackpool for a long time, these kind of teams. But when he was managing, his team were drawn against United, and Ronaldo was playing. Cristiano Ronaldo was playing, and man, I got this quote up. He said this on TV. He said, "He's 6 foot something, fit as a flea, good looking. He's got to have something wrong with him. Hopefully, he's hung like a hamster. That would make us all feel better." Having said that, my missus got a pet hamster at home, and his cock's fucking massive. Man, like, that's what people were saying on TV in the mid 2000s, and it was a great time. I'm very nostalgic for it, but the modern game has changed so much. And one word that I hear entering the lexicon of the modern game is tempo. We're hearing this word a lot. Tempo, tempo, tempo. And the only time I hear tempo really these days is in music. It's the only other place where we use the word tempo in English. So it's been catching my ear a little bit. I'm like, fuck, he's talking about tempo a lot here. Now, obviously, tempo was a thing in 2005 when I was watching football, but the word wasn't used as much. We had different ways of describing the game. There's a snobbery around the modern game as well, I think, that has brought in the use of these terms. Obviously, it's synonymous with classical music. So that's why a lot of people use it to give the game or give their opinions a certain amount of weight or class or stature. It's always shite. Anyway, it got me thinking about tempo and the word and what it means. And obviously I'm thinking with my head spinning like The Exorcist as I've drank a bottle of wine on the blame, but I came to a great idea and I wrote this episode. So first of all, I had to go to the roots because I love doing that. When it comes to words, I think when you learn, anyone out there who's multilingual will agree with this, when you learn another language, it gives you appreciation for where words come to. Because you'll be so often saying, oh, that word sounds like that. And native speakers will be like, fuck, I had never realized that. You don't in your native tongue, but when you learn another language, you start to think about the etymology or the structure of words a lot more. And it's fucking fascinating. It's so much fun. So I got to the roots, and that's all this podcast is. By the way, I hear something, I think of something, I go, fuck, I'd love to research that. 5 hours later, I've got an episode for you pricks. So we go back to tempo. It comes from tempus, which is Latin, and that's time. Easy peasy. Tempo, obviously adapted from that, as it does in most romantic languages. For example, in French, it's temps. Okay, so it's the same kind of a T-E-M-P-S in French. So it literally, tempo in Italian literally means time. So first of all, why do we use Italian? Why do we not just say speed or time? Why do we say tempo? The main reason is because the Baroque and Renaissance eras or periods of music were heavily born, influenced by, shaped by Italy. So a lot of this came from Italy. So it kind of became the lingua franca of music to use Italian, which it still is in many ways. It's kind of stuck. I actually think using these Italian words when we don't need to is a little bit exclusivity. A little bit about exclusivity, but it is a little bit exclusionary. It's a bit wanky. Like we do it with French vocabs now. You know, we use Italian French words to give it like an air of superiority or class, which is a load of shite because if anyone actually speaks Italian or French, the languages can be as disgusting and as uneducated and déclassé as fucking English can. And I'm aware of the irony of using a French word there. It was deliberate. Like the Italians and French can be as stupid as English speakers. Not Americans, but everybody else. They can be stupid. Maybe as stupid as Americans. Fuck me. So it's stuck. Now, football has the same idea. Modern game of football. We don't use it to replace the word time. And this is very important. When we say tempo, it's not to replace the word time. It's not a synonym. Okay? Like, it's not like you turn around to someone and go, here, excuse me, you haven't got the tempo on you there, have you? You sound like a wanker. What tempo is it there, man? Who the fuck says that? We don't use it that way. You sound like such a wanker. It's been adapted and changed in English to give it a slightly new meaning. It's a bit like how when you say panini in English, we have paninis in English. Panino is the Italian for sandwich. Panini is multiple sandwiches, but we now call a certain style of sandwich panini. We do this for food all the time, by the way. It gives it this air of being fancy. That's why in English, we very heavily differentiate the word for the meat between the word for the animal. I once heard a French person when I was in Ireland look out at a field and say, look at all the beefs in the field. And I fucking roared. Laughed. I was like, man, someone's hungry. Look at all the beefs. I haven't had beefs yet. And look at all the burgers out in the field. But they were telling me that it can be used interchangeably in languages in certain contexts, while in English it's very clear. And there's a very simple reason for that. It's because back in the days when people, working class or poor people, could not afford meat, the only people who could afford it were the upper classes. And the upper classes used the French language because it gave it a sense of superiority and, again, exclusionary language. So we have the word for pork. It comes from the word porc in French. Or beef comes from bœuf. Or poultry comes from poulet. Okay? And poulet is the word you use for a chicken. So it's different. But it's normal for them. So anyway, we don't use the word tempo. By the way, you can tell that I don't edit this podcast. I know certain podcasters will chop it up very, very cleverly to make sure that you don't notice when they're talking bollocks. This is rock and roll podcasting, baby. This is all straight from the horse's arse. So, it's became hard to define tempo in the anglicized version now because speed is probably the closest word, but it's not quite speed, because if it was speed, we'd use speed. And there's a lot of other words we use in Italian that don't translate exactly, especially for tempo marking. So speed markings that we use in music. For example, we have grave, not grave. Fuck's sake, grave means you're dead. We have a word in English for grave, grave, although it's a similar sort of etymology. But grave directly translates to sort of solemn. Or largo. It's not just slow, it also means broad or large. And you have lento, which is slow. It's long in French as well. Adagio is slow, but it's leisurely. Andante is at a walking pace, by the way. That's very important. Andantino is slightly faster than andante, because inno is how we make things slightly cuter in Italian. The same we do in French when you say et or ou. And we add a y usually in English, don't we? Moderato is moderately. Okay, allegretto is a little bit fast, moderately fast. Allegro is fast and lively. Is a very important translation part of that. Vivace is sort of brisk or lively as well. Presto, very fast, because you would say presto for if someone's bringing you a coffee and you're a dickhead. And prestissimo, same as inno. Issimo is to make something bigger or more exaggerated. So it's not just the speed, and it's the same in football. It's exactly the same in football. Like, the definition of tempo in football is really hard to get down, because we could try and measure it. So what is football tempo? Again, bear with me on this, lads, but I'm drawing connections here. My brain's on fire. So is a good definition of tempo how many times possession changes between teams? So if possession is changing quickly between one team to the other, who has the ball, is that a high tempo? That's, I think, the way most people would assume to measure to quantify it. But it's not really accurate, because when you think of high-tempo football teams, we think of people like Pep Guardiola and his Manchester City team at the minute. They are a high-tempo team, but when it comes to possession changeover in their games, they're actually the lowest in the English Premier League this year. So it goes against what we're thinking. Maybe a better image I have is when I think of tempo is teams passing the ball quickly when they have possession. So the time one individual player spends the ball is quite short. They pass on to someone else, it moves and sort of pings about in little triangles. If you're thinking of that, we're talking more like the tiki-taka Barcelona style of the 2012s, or that Spain team. The Spain team from 2008 to 2012 that won everything. So you're talking your Xavis, your Iniestas, your Messis, even your fucking Pedros and those boys knocking about. That's tempo. But again, it's very hard to measure quantifiably. So I suppose the closest is maybe the seconds between passes when a team has the ball. But again, if that was the case, City would be last. But we think of them as a high-tempo team. Especially the current Manchester City team with Pep Guardiola is a high-tempo team. So again, all this to say, tempo cannot be quantified. And there's so many different ways to do it. And there isn't a definition, because the official definition is time. So we've adapted and changed it in English. So it's much more of a feeling and a vibe, essentially, than a quantifiably measurable thing. At least in football. Like, if you take, talking about unhinged interviews, I found this one earlier. Ebbe Sovdal, who managed fucking Aberdeen in the 1980s, said, statistics are like miniskirts. They give you good ideas, but they hide the most important parts. That's fucking class, isn't it? And this is where it comes into music. Don't worry, lads, I'm back. We're back to music. It comes into this as well, because when you think of tempo and speed and time, the metronome, for example, which we use so commonly these days, or you should be using it to practice, but anyway, that was only invented in 1815 by a guy called Johann Melsel. Now, composers didn't add metronome markings until much later. Like, it's really the mid-1900s before it became commonplace to have like a BPM, like a beats per minute put on it, because nobody could measure it before then. And to be totally honest, even if they do it nowadays, if you give an exact BPM, like as a performer, you are like, oh, fuck off, mate. Like, have a bit of fucking freedom. Live a little. Yeah, give me an exact, like 136 bang on, please. Oh, fuck up. But how are you going to measure that when you're on stage? You're not going to sit with the metronome the whole time. Like, it's going to fluctuate, obviously. It's low shit. But 1815, the very first prototype for the metronome was made. So that means we are balls deep in the Romantic era. Well, not balls deep. We're starting in the Romantic era. But it means that all the composers of the Romantic era did technically have access to metronomes. They could have wrote exact markings. Beethoven, for example, was even gifted a metronome by Melsel later in his life, and he went back to a lot of his works and added tempi, added exact numbers for it, like exact things. And they're fucked. They are absolutely fucked. For example, the first movement of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the and then bim bum bum bim bum. That is measured at 120 by Beethoven. Beethoven wrote 120. So man, that's fucking ridiculous. We all know that's way too fast. That's ridiculous. And this is really interesting, because Beethoven put that in himself. So Peter Stadlin, who is a musicologist, spent years studying this. And he was actually looking for Beethoven's exact metronome, because Beethoven only had one. He spent ages looking for it, because it was Melzel's second metronome, still in the prototype stage. It's not really there. So finally, Stadlin found it in an antique shop down in Bonn, not far from here, about fucking 20 minutes south of Cologne. Place I go now. So he found it, and now the metronome is at the Beethoven House down in Bonn. It's where Beethoven used to live. It's been turned into a museum, blah, 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 blah. But interesting about the metronome, when it was found, there was no weight. So the actual the thing that brings it down to give it the pacing, the weight was gone. It was missing. So because of that, Stadlin actually wrote a really important work. It's an amazing read in 1951 called Beethoven and the Metronome, where he goes through all the different tempos and the theories to why. He does summarize by hypothesizing that it was broken. Beethoven's weight on the metronome was broken, and that's why it was so fucked in terms of tempos. And he had no real way to measure if that was correct or not. To us nowadays, we go 120. Oh yeah, well, we know what 120 is roughly. Back in them days, didn't really have a fucking clue. Nobody gave that much a shit about time. Now, that also mixed with poor copying from Beethoven was another explanation, because, for example, Beethoven's nephew Carl did a lot of the copying, and apparently he was dog shit at it. So, all I have to say, nobody bothers writing tempo markings, and nobody did bother. Beethoven gave it a go. Nobody else really bothered of that entire era, and that's the rub. There we are. Now we're getting to the reason. Because tempo was never meant to be exact. It is a vibe, it is a feeling, it is an art. And like all art, it is at the whim of emotion or environment or mood or context. An allegro today, my allegro today, when I start a piece of music, will be different to my allegro tomorrow, depending on what mood I got up in. Composers didn't always get this either. Like, people made a mess of certain translations. By the way, okay, sorry. Before I go on with this, because I'm realizing 18 minutes we've been talking here, we are more than 2/3 through here. But before I get to the big ending, I'm going to do my usual Patreon read. So if you're a usual regular listener to the Inline podcast, you can skip ahead right now. About a minute or two, you'll see it in the chapters. If you're new around here, or if you do just want to lend me your ears for a minute or two, it's very important, so please do. The Inline G podcast is free, and it will always be free. That is a guarantee. However, if you wish to donate to the podcast, you can now do so through the Patreon. On the screen now is the address, and for the audio listeners, it is patreon.com/the Inline G Flute podcast. Guys, I make an episode of this podcast every single week. I missed 1 week. In 133 weeks, I've missed one. Okay? Sorry. And I will catch up. But every Friday, there is an episode of this podcast coming out. I adore it. It is a lot of work, and it is the definition of a small independent podcast. I do every single aspect of this podcast on my own. That includes script writing, that includes audio production, video production, graphic design, you name it. Fucking G does it here. I adore it. It's an amazing thing to do. It is free. I know a lot of people are now using this for academic research and stuff. Fair play to you. Maybe don't quote me too much. Don't think you're going to get top marks for that, but I'm glad that people are finding various uses for this podcast and the information I'm bringing together for it. It is 100% free. I will never make episodes that are going to go behind a paywall. I don't believe in it. I think everyone should have free access. But you should support the podcast if you can. It's really appreciated. It costs €5 a month, whatever that is in your currency. It's usually about $6, I think, or like £4. You can sign up and then cancel straight away. So you just do a 1 month subscription and pay me. It's Patreon. It's very, it's reliable. It's massively appreciated. It is what's keeping this podcast alive. We have had many offers for sponsors to come on this podcast and pay me for my work, but they will not let me swear, they will not let me talk about politics, etc., etc. And I do not want to give over creative control for the sake of money. We are the world's biggest flute podcast, and we are 100% listener funded. That is fucking class. It is so rock and roll. So the people that do donate, thank you so much. You're the reason why Inline G has got to 133 episodes. Which, even saying that out loud, well, I couldn't say it, I tried my best. Even saying that out loud is fucking incredible. So thank you. So if you can afford it, please sign up over there. Also, if you can't afford it, first of all, that's fine. Don't worry, you can keep listening for free. Someone else is paying so you can. It's a system based on kindness and soundness. Also, if you can, please, fucking hell, go and leave a review wherever you're listening right now. If you're on YouTube, like the video, fucking comment anything, interact with it, follow me, for the love of God, subscribe on YouTube. If you're on Spotify, give it a 5-star review. 8 reviews off 100, which will shoot me up the algorithm. Please, 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 if you're listening, just give it a 5-star review. Don't give it anything less. If you're going to give it less, go fuck yourself, right? Please don't, because it's affecting my ratings. Please just give it a 5-star review wherever you're listening. Interact, find me on Instagram, do all the stuff that you can do for free. It takes you 30 seconds, and you're really helping me out, man. Really, really helping me out. So anyway, I love you. Thank you very much. Let's get back to the podcast. Yeah. So when it comes to the way we describe tempo and the way composers describe tempo, a lot of people made a mess of it. No more than my favorite composer, Ludwig van Beethoven, whose Italian was a fucking disaster sometimes. I don't know if it's a disaster or he just interpreted it differently. I mean, it's a nicer way of saying that he fucked it up. There's 3 famous examples of this with Beethoven's music. There's espressivo, dolce, and cantabile. So any classical musicians will know what these terms are, but if not, don't worry, I'll explain them. So espressivo directly translates to English as expressively. I've always found it a very stupid thing to put in their music, because what are you playing that isn't expressively? Has slightly different meanings, but Beethoven used it especially differently. Usually it would mean to add more vibrato, or to use a richer tone, or to use something that would just make it a little bit more, okay? To up your expressivity. But again, it's annoying because expressing what? You express laziness. It's a stupid term. But anyway, Beethoven comprehended it slightly differently. He used it often with hairpin dynamics, so when things get louder and then quieter, blah, blah, blah. Or with tempo changes to make everything a little bit more elastic and less sudden. So if Beethoven wanted you to go from slow to fast, but didn't want to use retardando or accelerando in this case, if he didn't want to use those exact other words, he would write espressivo to say, do it in a very fluid, elastic way. Don't go jumping. No mechanical fucking shifts of the gear stick and everything I'm asking you to do. Generally, that's how I understood it. Back before then, it was also used quite often by composers to highlight a certain line. So if you're playing the main voice, or if you're playing the piano and there's one particular finger that's playing the melody, let's hear that one a little bit more. Let's put a little bit of spice on that one. Now, dolce, the next one, which I always remember. I love asking my students this because dolce is easy to remember, because if you are a fat prick like I am, dolce de leche. Dolce is also, loads of sweeties are called dolce. So it means sweet, okay? It was used a lot before Beethoven. A lot. Like Jacques Rousseau, the composer, the French composer, he did like a glossary of musical terms, do you understand, in French and in Italian. And he actually used it as a substitute for piano. So for him, dolce was a dynamic market. It was quiet. We normally say piano for quiet in music. He just used dolce. Or he would use the French term doux, slightly same, or direct translation, but similar. Heinrich Koch, for example, he defined dolce as a somewhat weak tone, because if one says something sweetly or pleasantly, one speaks with a quiet and dampened voice. Beethoven used it alone and with piano. So he's doing something quietly. He did both. He also used it a lot in fast music, which was quite rare. So the modern idea or interpretation of what Beethoven meant by it is a gentle tone. It often follows, when you get to Beethoven's music, it often follows a diminuendo. So it gets quieter and quieter and quieter, and then he goes, right, now we're getting quietly, dolce. And then after it's dolce, it'll get a little bit louder and come back out of it. So there is an argument to be made that he uses it instead of quietly sometimes, or in place of that. There's also a theory running about that he uses it to indicate the word solo in an orchestra. So if you see dolce on your part in an orchestra with Beethoven, often it would mean solo, or he implies that to be a solo. So to bring it out a little bit, stand out, try not to blend, but to bring that line forward. But we're not sure yet. And the last one, cantabile. Cantabile, cantar in Spanish, cantar is to sing. Like a cantabile, directly translated, means in a singing style. Koch, again, Henry Koch said, for cantabile for him was with tones tied together and moderately strongly. So Beethoven does use cantabile in his Ninth Symphony appears and the Missa Solemni. So these are two pieces that have choirs or vocal lines. But he would often use it in the instrumental part directly after the choir or vocal line has been played. So let's say the choir sings something and the cellos pick it up. He would put cantabile on the cellos. That implies that it doesn't imply, but it could be interpreted that he's saying copy whatever they did. Copy what the singers did. Cantabile in the singing style, aka what the fucking singers just did 10 seconds ago. Do that. There's an argument to be made for that, and this is debated quite a lot and quite frequently. And there is so much debate on all this. I have read countless articles on Beethoven alone with those three terms, regardless of all the other composers and the way they think. So what is my point of all this? Usually, that is the question we ask every week in this podcast. What's the fucking point of this podcast? Why is Gareth doing this? I don't know. I've got too much spare time on my hands, to be totally honest. But anyway, for me, tempo is an art. And it is potentially, after the choice of which instrument you play, the most important single thing affecting the style or how you perform a piece of music. It's fundamental to everything that happens within a piece. So for that reason, we need to be flexible with it. We need to treat it as an art. Metronomes are for practice, and they're brilliant inventions, and you should be fucking doing them. But they are not law. You shouldn't be sticking to them. The police aren't going to arrest you for using the metronome or not using the metronome, more importantly. Anyone who says a piece has to be an exact certain tempo is honestly talking out their fucking hole. It's impossible to measure. You're not going to do the entire performance with a metronome beside you. And if you did, it would ruin the crack for everybody. Nobody wants to hear fucking for an entire performance. It's shite. Even modern composers, the ones who write exact tempos, they can go fuck themselves. I've done that so many times where I've worked with composers, played their piece, and then I've said afterwards, what do you think of the tempo? Oh, I loved it. And you're like, I know it's not the one you asked for because I deliberately chose it not to be. Nobody has that locked in exact metronome. So to pick an exact numbers of shit. It's a guide. It's an idea. It's a feeling. Also, let's stop saying the word tempi. Okay? Tempi is the plural of tempo. It just sounds wanky. It sounds stupid, right? Say tempos. We're not translating the word tempo, as I've just discussed, has a different meaning in English and it's been adapted. You don't look fancy, you look like a wanker. So tempo at the end of the day is all about control. And in football, if we're talking about tempo, we're going to talk about players who control the tempo. Players like Paul Scholes at Man United in the mid-2000s, or Kevin De Bruyne over at City, or Xavi in that great Barcelona team, or Zinedine Zidane for Juventus and then Real Madrid. These are the players who control the tempo of a game. These guys, when they get the ball, don't think of how many seconds they're going to control the tempo. Or they don't have a fucking stopwatch going, right, that's been 3 seconds, I may move this ball on. It's a feeling. It's a way of reading the game. It's an art. And it changes depending on the game. But they always control the tempo. And tempo is essentially all about who is allowed to decide what happens next. So here's some tips for you on how to practice tempo, to get familiar with tempo. Practice with metronomes for learning your notes, for getting a feeling. It's good to have a rough idea of how tempo goes and make sure you're not slowing down or speeding up. That's very useful because sometimes we don't realize the thing. So practice with it. But especially if it's a solo piece, start experimenting. Even if it's an orchestral piece, get to know everything you play at ridiculous tempos because you will know it intimately and the music will reveal more of itself. I'm telling you, take a fast piece and play it 3 times slower and try to play it like a slow piece of music. You will learn so much more about what's going on there and you get a big feel for it. Just do it. Don't even ask what you're going to get out of it. Just go and do it. Take whatever piece you're playing and do it at a stupidly fast tempo or a stupidly slow tempo and see what happens. And treat it as if it was written at that speed and see what the crack is. You will be amazed what you can learn out of it. And then it tells you that tempo is so fundamental to how we approach everything within music. Also, because music has a very limited and specific space in time. Music does not exist generally. Music is only there for that moment that you're playing it. Beethoven's Ninth does not exist on the score. The score is a guide to playing it. Beethoven's Ninth only exists when it's played. So the control of that time and how we approach that time is fundamental to the music's existence. So please be careful of what you do with tempo. Be fun with it. Experiment. Treat it as an art. It's a vibe. It's a feeling. It's not a number. Tempo is not a fucking number. We panic on stage if tempo changes. Who gives a fuck? Why do people panic about this? Why go, oh, I went too fast? Fuck it. You were feeling in the mood. You wanted to go fast. Rock and roll, mate. Go faster. Oh, I slowed down because I wasn't feeling great. Who cares? Nobody gives a fuck that you slowed down. If that's the way it feels and that's the way you want to interpret it, slow down. Do it, man. The best players don't chase tempo. They make everyone else adjust to theirs. It's more exciting. Don't be boring. I haven't got anywhere else to go here, lads. Again, I've ran out of runway, about 30 minutes. You're fucking, fuck it, we're done. Go watch Zinedine Zidane play some football. Go listen to some Mozart. See what you can do with them. See if you can put them together. Watching Zidane is like listening to Mozart. It's fucking beautiful. Go and watch a bit of football. Go practice. Have fun with your tempos. Have a bit of crack. Thank you for listening. As always, if you made it this far, you're a fucking OG. I love you. I love you all. And I will be back next week. Slag of foil, lads. Mwah.
Get your man the flute to play, son. The fuck.